Welcome back to the Maloney's Coasters YouTube channel, where today we are talking about Beyond the Cloud at Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World. It's Mark Ride's tallest and fastest launch coaster, but how does it stack up against the best coasters I've ridden from the German manufacturer? We're going to find out today as we put Beyond the Cloud under the microscope. Sit back and relax, click that like and subscribe button, and let's talk about Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World's 2022 Mark launch coaster. Before we start, a big thank you to the Keith Monorail Army, including General Scaretastic YT. Click the join button down below to become a member today. Today's roller coaster under the microscope is Beyond the Cloud, a Mark Ride's custom launch coaster opened in 2022 at Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World in Suzhou, China. It stands 63 meters tall, 1,040 meters of track, a top speed of 130 kilometers an hour, and 5 inversions including a zero G roll, Immelman, Cobra loop, and vertical loop. It exerts a positive G-force of 4.4 on its riders. Let's start off by talking about the ride's presentation and theming. Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World overall is a very nicely presented park, and although it's not a theme park, there are some really nice touches with a number of the rides. I will briefly mention that the entrance to the park in general is probably the most beautiful park entrance I've ever seen, so expectations were set pretty high for how some of these rides would look. Now, Beyond the Cloud, like most rides at this park, it's not themed. There's no real consistent theming here, but there are some details that are added. They haven't really given it a theme or a coherent narrative or even a coherent style at all, but they have gone with some nice touches which seem to be quite Egyptian inspired, particularly in the station. There's a few little architectural details and decorations that take on that Egyptian style. There's no real coherence here. The train, as you've probably seen, is just an orange version of the standard Mark launch coaster train. No theming added to the ride itself, but I wouldn't say it looks bad in any way either. What they really seem to have focused on is how the ride plays into the park's skyline, which it does very nicely, particularly the top hat and the Immelman, both absolutely tower over the skyline of the park. The area around the ride also looks really nice. There's quite a leafy green area, and this looked really nice when I visited in November. The leaves are starting to change color as they head into winter, so it looked really pretty around that area of the park. So there's some nice little details. There's this vague Egyptian theme going on, but really overall this ride, it's not themed. The station, as it's set up, is kind of similar to the previous two Mark coasters that we've reviewed, in that it's kind of minimalistic. There's a kind of recurrent theme there. So overall, the presentation of the facade details, it is nice, but the theming is relatively minimal. Let's move on now to the station, train, and operations. The station on Beyond the Cloud, basic but functional, just like the pattern of the coasters we've been talking about so far with DC Rivals and Steel Taipan as well. The station is where you're going to find most of the theming details, but again, these are fairly off to the side. You'd be forgiven for not even noticing that they were there. The station is set up in the opposite orientation to what Steel Taipan is. So you enter Steel Taipan's kind of loading area from the rear of the train. In the case of Beyond the Cloud, you enter the final switchbacks and enter from the side of the platform that is the front of the train. You're loaded up one train at a time into the air gates. There's a few things to note about Chinese operations compared to Australian operations that make it slightly different. In China, there's quite a lot of pre-ride instruction that has to be given before you're allowed to board the ride. So the whole loading procedure is just a little bit slower. You've got one of the attendants who has a microphone and gives you all these instructions. They very much take boarding procedures step by step. However, I found on Beyond the Cloud, actually they were quite efficient at doing that. It seems like the ride is pretty well set up to be able to accommodate all of those extra requirements quite well, and it didn't really slow it down all that much as far as I noticed. The train is the same Mark Rides train that we've been talking about for the past two reviews, the one that they use on their launch coasters, hyper coasters, with the standard over-the-shoulder lap bar. The main difference that you'll find, other than the fact that in this case it is not themed, we've had the Batmobile and the Taipan for the previous two trains, this one is just a plain orange train. The other difference is that, like many coasters in China, this coaster features a lap seat belt, which is underneath the lap bar. Now, overall, every enthusiast is going to come into a review saying that that's a negative. I didn't find that it inhibited my ride experience at all, really. It does slow down operations because the attendants have to check that the seatbelt is correctly fastened before they allow you to lower the lap bar, because obviously if the lap bar's in the way, they can't really see the seatbelt or access it. So that means that they kind of have to do a double pass. But, you know, aside from that frustration, I was expecting it to inhibit my experience of the ride. It didn't really. I didn't really notice it was there. Operations on Beyond the Cloud were actually one of the better ones in China. I found that they were quite keen to keep the ride moving and keep it efficient. And that was to their credit. You know, obviously there's some things that are requirements that they have to do, like the pre-ride spiel that seems to be in place across China, and the fact that it has the waist seatbelt, which also is a thing that seems to be in place pretty much universally across China. But I found they actually did pretty well, all things considered. With all of those extra procedures, they were still trying to pump out trains pretty quickly. One thing I noticed is at the end of the day, a bunch of the school groups that were at the park, they kind of left. And at that point, rather than what I've seen happen in some places, where they'll just wait around until they get enough people to board a train, when you start to get the really, really low period of the day and there's barely anybody at the ride, they were keeping only a few seats open. They would keep the lap bars closed on most of the train, and that way they could just keep rolling trains rather than waiting around and standing around doing nothing, waiting for a train to be slightly more full. So that was good to see as well. So yeah, it does face some issues, that double checking with the added seatbelts. But, you know, as far as operations go, I would say Beyond the Cloud was the best of the major coasters in China, which is interesting because another coaster at the same park, Broken Rail roller coaster, I would say had by far the worst. So, yeah, it seems like they've done really well with the operations for this coaster, but that's not necessarily a park-wide thing. The last thing I'll note about the station, you do get a little bit of a bottleneck on the exit because the photo shop is actually built into the side of the station, and that causes a little bit of bottlenecking as people stop to check out their ride photos directly at the exit. But the other thing that I noticed, and this is really weird, is the platform as you board the ride. There's no kind of separation of the platform and the train, and there's actually a height difference. So usually with train design and station design when it comes to coasters, either you will have one of two things. You'll either have, and of course I'm only talking about sit-down trains here, when you have inverted trains or whatever, it's slightly different. But you'll either have a floor that is exactly level with the level of the train, which means you avoid any trip hazards and that sort of thing. Or like if you do have an elevated kind of lip, like on older Arrow or Vekoma trains, you'll have it at a level that is acceptable to step in. Or you may have, like on a Vekoma family Boomerang, for example, you may have a retractable floor. And this is for a few different reasons. You know, you want to avoid trip hazards as much as possible. The retractable floors tend to be when you are moving through the station at speed, it's best to get anything that you could potentially reach out of the way. And this is where I found Beyond the Cloud's design really curious, because you do launch straight out of the station, which means if you're in the back of the train, you are moving through that platform at quite a rate of knots by the time you clear the platform. But not only is the floor right there and like millimeters away from the edge of the train, but it's actually elevated above the train floor level at about ankle height. So you could really hit your ankles really, really hard on that edge if you were to swing your legs out while you were launching in the back of the train. Just saying, and if anyone who is involved at Suzhou Amusement Land is listening, just saying, I don't know, maybe there's a reason it's designed that way, but that's something that I noticed that I thought was a bit curious. Maybe lower that. I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about the ride itself. First of all, the big question that I've gotten ever since people found out that I've now been on Beyond the Cloud is, what is the launch like? We all know historically that Mark rides have a reputation of having slightly weak launches compared to others like Intamin, or even some of the newer ones to the LSM game like Vekoma. But this one hits a top speed of 130 kilometers an hour. It's Mark's fastest launch coaster. So is it any better? Well, a couple of things. First thing I noticed is that this LSM launch has an interesting mechanism on it where it actually has like kind of a cooling device. There's this pipe that runs along the side of the LSM fins on both sides. And just before the ride launches, you'll hear that kind of whatever the machinery is there will kind of kick in, like this humming or like hissing sound, I guess, starts up just before the ride launches. It's what I figured out it is it's blowing cold air onto the LSM fins, which immediately tells you straight away, this thing, it's pumping, it's going full blast because it needs to be kept cool to prevent it from overheating, I guess. The initial launch on Beyond the Cloud has two kicks. The kick out of the station is relatively weak, kind of what you'd expect of a standard Mark coaster, kind of that, there's a kick, but it's very, very slow. About a second and a half later, there is a second kick. So I think what Mark has done here is they've designed it so that it has a little LSM push off just to get the train rolling, and then it basically treats it like a rolling launch. And that second kick is immense. It's absolutely fantastic. Especially in the front, I found it really pushed me back into my seat, peeled my face off. And then it's a long launch track, and you just pick up speed so rapidly, and by the time you reach the end of that launch track and you're at 130 k's an hour, it is just peeling the skin on your face back. It's absolutely incredible. From that launch, you will launch directly up into that 200-foot outside top hat. In the front rows, very good airtime all the way across the top of the top hat. It's perfectly shaped to just give you nice, sustained airtime all the way across the top, and then you dive back out again vertically down. Now, this is where the second of Beyond the Cloud's most famous elements, aside from it being this super fast launch coaster from Mark, it also has what is dubbed the fastest inversion in the world. It is a 0G roll, which is almost at ground level, really. Like, you dive straight back down off that 200-foot top hat. So you'd have to be damn near that top speed of 130 k's an hour. You probably lose like 5 k's maybe after going over the top hat. So you're doing 120, 125, something like that. And this 0G roll is really whippy. It's fantastic. It's almost as good as the Blue Fire roll. I think the Blue Fire roll is slightly better. Mainly because I think the Blue Fire roll is more inline than Heartline. So you do get that kind of, the way it's profiled means that your Heartline is kind of ejected a little bit more. This one's a bit Heartline. The Heartlining is designed a little bit more to be, I guess, a bit less laterally intense. So it's not quite as whippy. But it is still super, the way you take it is super fast, it's very snappy. You'll then enter the second inversion, an Immelmann. This Immelmann is really big for starters. It's got to be, 150 feet tall, and it is, amazing. Great airtime over the top. Good blast of airtime as you exit, and then you dive back down again. What I really love about the way they've designed Beyond the Clouds layout as a whole is that you've got the two ends where you have these super tall elements, and then in between the ride keeps really, really low. It sticks very low to the ground, which is great through that 0G roll, and then you get that nice airtime over the top of the implement, and then it keeps low again. There's another little great airtime pop as you head back in the other direction, which is just such a nice blast of airtime through it. Then you head back towards that, towards the 200-foot top hat, and into a cobra roll, which wraps around the top hat. Sadly, this is the weakest element on the ride. It is a bit too big for its own good. It doesn't exert the same force and snappiness as the other inversions on the ride or even any of the other elements. It's nice because of its height. I do like the kind of height that you get on it, but it's very glidey and a rather forceless inversion. But then you dive out into a vertical loop, and this vertical loop surprised me. I thought it would be a bit more like Steel Taipans, where it's tall but it doesn't do much. I thought it had nice sustained positives all the way through that loop, so I actually thought it was pretty good. Diving out of the loops, you enter a double up into the final brakes. This is a perfect finale to this ride. This double up is bang, bang, 2 shots of just amazing ejector. Straight up into those final brakes. And look, overall, Beyond the Cloud may not be the longest ride on the planet. It's got a very compact footprint. They've crammed a lot into a small space, but what they've crammed in is great. This ride is pacey. It is very, very powerful. And yeah, it makes the most of that small plot of land to give you some quality trademark mark ejector, some great inversions as well. One of the best LSM launches I've ever experienced, and overall just a really snappy, fun, powerful ride. Gotta love it. Overall, I would say this is a front row ride. If you get an opportunity and you're visiting on a relatively quiet day like I was, make sure you get a front row ride. I found the front is where the airtime hits the best, and you'll also get to experience the raw speed of that launch, really feel the wind hitting your face as you hit that top speed of 130 k's an hour. It really feels like there's a lot of similarities to the other Mark launch coasters, your Blue Fires and that sort of thing, but it's dialed up to 11. This is really the next level of launch coaster. All of the things that are good about Blue Fire and about Icon and about other Mark launch coasters, but dialed up a notch. Really, the ride's only weakness is that Cobra roll. I like Cobra rolls as an element, and I think it's nice that Mark have tried one. I don't think they've done very many of them before, but it is a weak spot. It kind of doesn't do much. It's a bit glidey. It's a bit forceless. Now, I did also notice there was a slight rattle in one of the cars. It was not rougher towards the back than the front, because I also did ride it. My very first ride was in the back car. And I've also rode it in the front car, obviously, but it was one of the middle cars that actually had the roughness issue. So I think something to note may be that that's a train maintenance issue, and it could be worth noting that that is the case, because if the ride ages and the park is perhaps not very good at maintaining their trains, that could be something of note, because that can result in issues like roughness and rattles and that sort of thing. I particularly noticed it when riding in, I believe it was row 5, and as we reached the end of the launch track, there was this big shudder as the train hit top speed. So it definitely seemed like a train maintenance issue there, because as I said, the back car didn't have the same problem. But overall, this is a really excellent addition for this park. It's put this, what is overall a small to medium-sized park, on the map in a big way, because I think this is one of the best coasters in China as far as what I've seen and experienced so far. It is absolutely fantastic, and definitely puts what is a nice park overall. I think it's a really pretty park. I really, really like it, but there's not much else there that would really put this park on a coaster enthusiast map other than Beyond the Cloud, and it's a great addition for them, and I hope it serves them well so that they can continue to build into the future. Before we dive into the final verdict, let's talk ride restrictions. Beyond the Cloud has a minimum height restriction of 130 centimeters and a maximum of 190 centimeters. So again, reasonably accessible for a ride of this scale. You've got the standard mark lap bars. Once again, as I've mentioned in the past 2 reviews, these can be a little bit difficult if you are larger around the waist or thighs. It does need to staple downwards onto you, and there is a minimum limit it needs to reach. And this ride also includes the additional waist seatbelt, which needs to be secured beforehand. Due to the restrictive nature of the harness, some riders may not be able to ride. Unfortunately, unlike the previous 2, there is no test seat available at Beyond the Cloud. But for reference, the harness is identical to those on other Mark coasters. So if you've been on Steel Taipan, DC Rivals, Hyperia, Icon, any of the others all over the world, you'll have no problems with Beyond the Cloud. According to the park, this ride is not suitable for guests with hypertension, heart discomfort or illness, lower back disease, mental illness, epilepsy, dizziness, those wearing prosthetics or who have bone injuries or who have had recent surgery, and it is not recommended for those with fear of heights or confined spaces. Guests must be able to absorb sudden and dramatic movements and should be able to descend stairs and ladders independently or with the assistance of a carer in the event of an evacuation. If there's going to be an evacuation on Beyond the Cloud, there's 2 main points that it could be from: the launch track or the final brakes. Neither of those is particularly high off the ground. You'll probably just have to descend a catwalk and some stairs to the evacuation point. There are no real high mid-course brakes on this ride that could be of major concern for you there, but please do remember that staff members may be unable to physically assist you in the event of an evacuation just for safety reasons. So it's important that you are able to descend stairs and ladders independently or with the assistance of a carer. In order to ride, guests will need to remove all loose items, and this actually does include prosthetic limbs. Now, the park doesn't specify its policy on limb differences in prosthetic limbs, unlike DC Rivals and Steel Taipan, where it's quite clear on the minimum number of functioning natural limbs. But it should be expected that if you do have prosthetics, they will need to be removed, and that as a result, you may not be able to ride at the discretion of the park and the operator. So if you are somebody who has or uses prosthetics or who has differences in their natural limbs, it is worth asking the park in advance. Or if you, as a matter of fact, if you have any disability or difference that may affect your ability to ride, double check with the park. And I would recommend heading to the guest services at the park entrance. As always, any rider on a roller coaster should be able to independently maintain an upright seated position and support their head and neck for the duration of the ride, and be able to transfer into the seat either independently or with the assistance of a carer, not a staff member. So in terms of accessibility, Beyond the Cloud is pretty consistent with the other Mark coasters that we've spoken about on this scale. A lot of the wording and specific restrictions are slightly different in China, and sometimes that wording can be a little bit mistranslated when it comes to the signage at the park. So if you have any concerns, any questions, or any doubts, you can contact the park in advance or speak to guest services located at the park entrance. I found the staff at Suzhou were very helpful and accommodating, even when there was a language barrier. So don't hesitate to discuss your needs or ask any questions with staff during your visit. They were absolutely fantastic with some concerns that I had when I was at the park on the day. So yeah, highly recommend just speaking to them if you have any doubts at all. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the final verdict. I deem Beyond the Cloud to be an S-tier coaster. For a compact layout, Mark have crammed in just about everything you could want from one of their launch coasters. It is a punchy, well-paced, rapid-fire layout with some great inversions, stacks of ejector airtime, and definitely the best launch I've experienced from Mark so far. The Cobra Roll is the only weak spot in the layout, and it doesn't take away from the sheer brilliance of the ride. It's a Mark masterpiece, that's for sure. And with that, Beyond the Cloud enters our World Roller Coaster Rankings at number 2, behind DC Rivals and ahead of Steel Taipan. Join me next week for our next review. I've been Maloney's Coasters. Click the like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment to help out against the YouTube algorithm, and I'll see you later in the week. Bye-bye.